The phone call ended with a click that echoed like a gunshot in their tiny Boston apartment. "I'm sorry, ladies, but we have a strict policy against that sort of thing here. It's a family-oriented building," the landlord, Mr. Harlan, had said after spotting Megan and Dallas holding hands in the background of the application video. Megan Thompson set the phone down slowly, her white doctor's coat still wrinkled from the 12-hour shift at Boston General, and looked across the kitchen table at her partner of 5 years, Dallas Rivera. "He rejected us because we're a couple," she whispered, the words tasting like ash. Dallas, her dark hair tied back in a ponytail from her own duties, reached for Megan's hand. "We'll find another place, Meg. We always do." But Megan's mind was already racing to the deeper problem. If her father ever found out about this rejection, or worse, the reason behind it, the family name would be dragged through the mud he guarded like a fortress. Megan had grown up in a strict Catholic household in the suburbs, where her father, Richard Thompson, a prominent defense lawyer, preached family honor above all. "The Thompsons don't have scandals," he'd say at every dinner. Her mother, Eleanor, nodded along, arranging perfect Sunday masses. Even her younger sister Emily followed the script, engaged to a nice Catholic boy. Megan had hidden her truth since college, meeting Dallas during their residency. Dallas, with her Puerto Rican roots and bold spirit, had been the light that made hiding bearable. They kept it quiet at work, shared a studio to save for a better life. Now, with promotions looming and both of them 32, they wanted space, a real home with room for a study and maybe even a dog. This denial hit harder than any late-night code blue. They spent the evening in silence at first, the city lights of Boston flickering through the single window. Megan replayed the landlord's tone in her head, the way his voice had shifted from polite to cold the moment he realized. She had seen patients face the same quiet judgment in the hospital corridors, but never directed at her own life. Dallas finally spoke, her voice steady but tired. "We could fight it, file a complaint. Massachusetts has laws." Megan shook her head, the fear coiling tighter. "And have it splashed across some court docket? My father would see it before the ink dried. You know how he is." The argument was old, worn smooth from years of repetition, yet it never lost its sting. Dallas stood and began clearing their untouched dinner plates, her movements sharp with frustration she tried to hide. Later that night, as they lay in the narrow bed, Megan stared at the ceiling, her mind drifting back to the day they met. It had been orientation week at Harvard Med. Both of them exhausted and over-caffeinated. Dallas had joked about the terrible coffee in the lounge, and Megan had laughed harder than she had in years. One study session turned into late-night talks, then stolen kisses in the call room. 5 years later, their love was the only thing that felt real amid the long hours and life-or-death decisions. But reality pressed in. Megan's phone buzzed on the nightstand, her father. She let it go to voicemail, but the message preview said enough. "Your mother and I have someone we'd like you to meet. A fine young attorney from my firm. Dinner next week." The timing couldn't have been worse. Megan deleted the notification without listening, but the weight settled heavier on her chest. The next morning at the hospital, Megan moved through rounds on autopilot. She consulted on a complicated cardiac case with Dallas, their professional masks firmly in place, no lingering glances, no casual touches. In the break room, a colleague mentioned the new luxury apartments downtown. Megan forced a smile. "We're still looking." Inside, the rejection burned. By lunch, she had already lined up 3 more viewings, all carefully worded emails that avoided any hint of their relationship. Dallas cornered her in the stairwell during a quiet moment. "We can't keep living like this, Meg. Hiding every detail." Megan leaned against the cold wall, the scent of antiseptic sharp in the air. "I know. But my family, if they found out, Dad's clients would drop him. Mom would never show her face at church again. I can't do that to them." Dallas's eyes softened, but the hurt lingered. They parted with a quick, hidden brush of fingers, the kind of small gesture that had sustained them for years, but now felt like a bandage on a wound that needed stitches. That evening, Megan drove to her parents' house alone, the familiar colonial facade looming under the streetlights. Dinner was polite small talk until her father cleared his throat. "We worry about you, Megan. Living in that cramped place with whoever. It's time to think about settling down properly." She nodded, the lie tasting bitter. while her mind screamed the truth she could never say. Back home, she found Dallas already asleep, one arm stretched across the empty side of the bed as if waiting. Megan slipped in beside her, whispering an apology into the dark. The apartment denial had cracked something open, and she wasn't sure how long the pieces could hold. Tomorrow they would keep searching, keep pretending. But the clock was ticking louder than ever on the life she was trying to balance on a razor's edge. Weeks blurred into a routine of rejections and near misses. Every apartment manager seemed to sense something unspoken. Or perhaps Megan's paranoia made every question feel like an interrogation. She and Dallas poured their energy into work instead, volunteering for extra shifts at Boston General, their skills as cardiothoracic surgeons earning quiet respect among the staff. Yet the tension followed them home each night. Megan's visits to her family grew more frequent, each one a minefield of subtle hints about marriage and grandchildren. Her mother would set an extra place at the table. Her father would mention eligible bachelors from the country club. Megan smiled through it all, the perfect daughter, while her stomach twisted. One Sunday afternoon, Megan drove out alone again. The house smelled of fresh bread and her mother's perfume. "We only want what's best," Eleanor said, folding napkins with precise movements. Richard joined them, loosening his tie after a long day in court. "Your sister Emily is engaged, you know. You could learn from her example." Megan swallowed hard. The words she wanted to say lodged in her throat. Instead she nodded, promising to consider the latest setup her parents had arranged. On the drive back, her phone connected to the car speakers and she called Dallas. "I can't keep lying like this forever," she admitted, voice cracking. Dallas's reply was gentle but firm. "Then don't. We deserve more than half a life, Meg." The argument escalated when Megan walked through the door, the small apartment feeling even smaller under the weight of unspoken fears. They sat on the edge of the bed, the city humming outside. Dallas traced patterns on Megan's palm. "What if we stopped waiting? We've talked about opening our own clinic for years, specializing in women's cardiac care, something that's ours." Megan looked up, the idea sparking something new amid the exhaustion. "We could use our savings, apply for grants. It would give us independence." They stayed up late sketching plans on a legal pad, names like Thompson Rivera Cardiac Center scribbled in the margins. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered. But the next morning brought another text from her father. "Dinner with the attorney is set for Friday. Don't disappoint us." Megan deleted it, but the guilt remained. At the hospital, their proposal gained traction during a staff meeting. Colleagues praised their vision, unaware of the personal stakes. Dallas squeezed Megan's knee under the table in a rare private moment, and Megan allowed herself to imagine a future where they didn't have to hide. Yet that evening, another family call came. Emily's voice on the line was excited. "Mom says you're finally meeting someone serious. I'm so happy for you." Megan froze, the betrayal of her own silence stinging. She mumbled something non-committal and hung up, turning to Dallas with tears in her eyes. "They're planning my whole life without me." Dallas pulled her close. "Then write your own chapter. With me." The night ended in quiet determination, their clinic plans spreading across the coffee table like a map to freedom. But Megan knew the road ahead would test every promise they had ever made. Friday arrived too quickly. Megan stood in front of her closet, choosing a modest dress her mother would approve of, the fabric feeling like a costume. Dallas watched from the doorway, arms crossed. "You don't have to go, Meg. Tell them the truth." Megan turned, the weight of years of conditioning pressing down. "One dinner. It keeps the peace. Then we focus on the clinic." Dallas's jaw tightened, but she nodded. The drive to the upscale restaurant felt like a funeral procession. The attorney, Mark, was polite, successful, everything her parents wanted. Conversation flowed about law and medicine. But Megan's mind kept drifting to Dallas waiting at home. When Mark suggested a second date, she heard herself agree, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Back in the apartment, Dallas was waiting with takeout gone cold. "How was Prince Charming?" The sarcasm cut deep. Megan tried to explain, but the words tangled. "It was just to buy time. For us." Dallas stood, voice rising for the first time in months. "Time for what? Until your father picks your wedding date? I'm not a secret you can keep forever." They argued until midnight, old wounds reopening. Dallas's frustration at always being the hidden partner. Megan's terror of the fallout. The next morning brought awkward silence at the hospital. During a joint surgery, their professional rhythm remained flawless, but the personal distance ached. That week, hospital politics added pressure. A board member questioned their collaboration on the clinic proposal, hinting at personal entanglements. Megan brushed it off, but the fear grew. Emily called again, probing about Mark. He's perfect for you, sis. Dad's already talking investments. Megan's stomach dropped. She met Dallas for coffee in the cafeteria. The betrayal of her own words from the dinner hanging between them. I canceled the second date, she admitted. Dallas softened slightly. But how many more lies before it breaks us? They left it unresolved, throwing themselves into clinic grant applications instead. Late nights turned into early mornings, blueprints and budgets filling the space where intimacy used to live. Megan felt herself fracturing. The woman her family raised clashing violently with the woman she had become with Dallas. The leak came on a rainy Tuesday. Megan's sister Emily had overheard a hushed phone call, pieced together the truth from years of half-answers, and panicked. I had to tell Dad. Emily sobbed over the phone. He was asking questions, threatening to hire a private investigator. I thought I was protecting you. The words landed like blows. Megan stood in the hospital parking lot, rain soaking her coat, as her father's voice exploded through the speaker. Get over here now. We're fixing this mess before it ruins everything. She drove in silence, the wipers slashing across the windshield like accusations. At the house, Richard paced the living room, face red with fury. A woman? After everything we gave you? The church, the name, the reputation. Eleanor wept quietly in the corner. Megan tried to speak, but the denial slipped out first. It's not what you think. We're just colleagues. The partial lie tasted like poison, but it bought a moment of stunned silence. Dallas waited at home, the apartment dark. When Megan finally returned, the truth poured out in broken sentences. Dallas listened, then stood slowly. You denied us. To them. To protect the very people who would erase me. The pain in her voice was raw. They argued until dawn, Megan begging for understanding, Dallas retreating behind a wall of hurt. The next days were hell. At work, Megan threw herself into surgeries, avoiding Dallas's shifts. The clinic proposal stalled as rumors circulated. Emily texted apologies, but the damage was done. Richard demanded weekly check-ins, monitoring Megan's every move. One night, alone in the studio, Megan stared at a photo of her and Dallas from residency, tears blurring the image. The betrayal from her own sister had forced her hand, and now she had betrayed the only person who truly saw her. Dallas moved to a friend's couch temporarily, the separation a raw wound. Megan visited her parents under duress, nodding through lectures on sin and duty. Inside, the conflict raged, identity versus the only family she had ever known. The hospital board noticed the tension, questioning their joint projects. Megan's hands shook during a complex procedure, the personal cost bleeding into her precision. Dallas, meanwhile, channeled her pain into late-night research for the clinic, refusing to let the dream die even as her heart broke. The separation stretched into weeks that felt like years. Megan buried herself in double shifts, volunteering for every complex case, while Dallas threw her energy into grant writing from a borrowed desk. Their secret collaboration continued through encrypted emails, reviewing blueprints, securing investors, naming the future facility the Thompson-Rivera Cardiac Institute. It was the only thread still connecting them. Megan's family eased slightly, believing the phase had passed, but the surveillance never lifted. Richard even attended a hospital gala with her, introducing her to more suitable contacts. She smiled through gritted teeth, the emptiness growing. One evening, Mr. Harlan, the same landlord who had rejected them, showed up in the ER with chest pain. Dallas treated him, recognizing the name instantly. Small world, she thought bitterly. Harlan recovered, grateful, but the irony lingered. Megan heard about it secondhand and felt a strange twist of fate. The clinic plans advanced quietly. Investors loved their vision, unaware of the personal storm behind it. Megan and Dallas met once in a neutral coffee shop to sign final papers, the conversation stilted but civil. "We're almost there," Dallas said softly. Megan nodded, regret heavy in her chest. The temporary distance had clarified everything. She could not live half a life anymore. Family pressure peaked when Richard announced a surprise engagement party for Emily, expecting Megan to bring a date. She declined, citing work, but the fallout was immediate. Accusations of selfishness, threats to cut financial support she had never asked for. Alone in her apartment, Megan drafted a resignation letter she never sent, the hospital now feeling like another cage. Dallas texted late one night. "The institute opens in 2 months. Will you be there?" Megan's reply was simple. "I wouldn't miss it." The seeds of courage were sprouting amid the ruins. The grand opening of the Thompson Rivera Cardiac Institute drew Boston's elite. Crystal chandeliers glittered over the new atrium, the largest private cardiac facility in the city. Megan stood at the podium in a tailored suit. Dallas beside her in quiet solidarity. The crowd applauded as the ribbon was cut, the name they had fought for shining in bronze above the entrance. Then Megan saw him, Mr. Harlan, now a patient advocate for the institute after his recovery, chatting with board members. Recognition dawned on his face, followed by shock. He approached later, voice low. "I had no idea. The apartment, I was wrong. Congratulations on everything you built." The irony landed like a final punctuation mark on their journey. But the real climax came during Megan's speech. Microphones caught every word as she stepped forward, heart-pounding. "This institute exists because of love, the kind that refuses to stay hidden. I am proud to stand here with my partner, Dr. Dallas Rivera, not just as colleagues but as the women we truly are." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. In the back, her father stood frozen, Eleanor beside him pale. Later that night, the call came. Richard's voice was ice. "You chose this. Don't expect us at your door again." The line went dead. Megan lowered the phone, tears falling, but Dallas's arms wrapped around her in the quiet of their new shared home. The price was steep, family ties severed, reputation in conservative circles shattered, but the freedom was real. Success followed swiftly. The institute thrived, saving lives daily, its name now synonymous with excellence. Megan and Dallas walked the halls hand in hand, no longer hiding. The landlord's earlier rejection felt like a distant footnote, replaced by gratitude from the community they served. Yet the empty chair at family gatherings still ached. Megan had made the irreversible choice, and the world had not ended, only changed. True or false? In strict traditional families, should one always sacrifice personal love to protect the family name?